Airport safety is an important part of aviation safety. It may sound strange, but it's true that every successful flight begins and ends at an airport. And that makes airport safety everybody's business. The pilot, the controller, the line technician, and countless others all play key roles in making sure that an airport is safe. But the prime responsibility rests with the airport operator. While some hazardous airport conditions develop virtually instantaneously, others are gradual. So it's important to have an airport self-inspection program that identifies specific areas so that small problems don't have a chance to grow into major safety hazards. A successful self-inspection program should have 4 components: a daily inspection of physical facilities, continuous surveillance of certain airport activities such as fueling operations, a periodic condition inspection program for such things as surveying approach slopes, and special inspections during unusual conditions or situations. This presentation addresses that part of the self-inspection program involving the daily inspection of physical facilities. But there are some references to items that require continuous surveillance, periodic condition inspections, or special inspections. 9 subject areas have been identified and are covered as part of this daily airport inspection videotape. The subjects are pavement, safety areas, markings and signs, lighting, navigational aids, obstructions, fuel farms, snow and ice conditions, and construction on airports. Daily inspections are recommended for wildlife hazards, public protection safeguards, and aircraft rescue and firefighting facilities, equipment, and vehicles. But those subjects are not specifically addressed in this presentation. Also, we're dealing with a generic airport, so there may be elements at your airport that should be included as part of your daily inspections that are not addressed here. Before we address the 9 subject areas, let's review what inspectors should know, what equipment they should have, and what procedures would be in place for a good daily self-inspection program. First, the inspector must be knowledgeable about the airport and should know the location and types of its various facilities. He or she should also be familiar with the standards applicable to the airport as specified in the FAA Advisory Circular Series 150. Advisory circulars are provided and maintained by the FAA to assist airport personnel in the safe operation of their facility. Due to changing requirements and new technologies, advisory circulars should be reviewed on a continuous basis to ensure that only the latest information is utilized for airport operations. And the inspector should know and use correct radio communication procedures and techniques. As for equipment, the inspector should have a vehicle with a beacon and a 2-way radio, and should be supplied with checklists covering various inspection areas. And while formats of checklists vary, the important thing is to develop a checklist that is useful for your specific airport and its operation. A sketch of the airport should accompany your checklist so that the location of problems can be readily identified. To make the daily inspections effective, there must be procedures for reporting deficiencies so that they can be corrected. There should be established procedures for reporting through the Notice to Airmen or NOTAM system, a way of acknowledging that corrective actions have been taken, and a method for removing NOTAMs that are no longer applicable. That then is the essence of a good airport self-inspection program. But now, let's take a look at the specifics. The condition of pavement surfaces is an important part of airport safety. At the minimum, a daily inspection should be performed of all paved areas used by aircraft. During this inspection, you should look for pavement lip problems, cracks, potholes, spalling, bumps and low spots, edge dams, foreign object debris, and rubber contamination. Pavement lips, the area between the full-strength pavement and shoulders, or paved shoulders and safety areas, should not be more than 3 inches high. But while 3 inches is the maximum acceptable height of a lip, it should be no greater than necessary to allow water to drain from the pavement surface. This is particularly important because lips higher than 3 inches can damage aircraft tires and landing gear. Pavement lips at runway ends need careful examination since they are particularly susceptible to jet blasts and prop wash. The lips on the sides of runways and taxiways aren't usually affected by jet blasts or prop wash, but water draining from the pavement can cause side lip problems, so it's important to make sure that these lips not be more than 3 inches high. Looking for cracks is another part of the daily inspection routine. Some cracks, like this one, are actually wide enough to cause control problems for a plane. Most cracks are small and seem insignificant, but the problem with small cracks is that they are usually the beginning of serious pavement problems. For example, when water from storm runoff drains into cracks, the structural integrity of the pavement base and the subbase can be damaged, and eventually, major cracks may develop. Consequently, all cracks found should be reported so that repairs can be made quickly. Potholes, like cracks, tend to grow. So during the daily inspection, you should be on the lookout for potholes of any size and report them so that they can be patched. Generally, any hole that is more than 5 inches across and 3 inches deep can cause an airplane to lose directional control or damage its tires or landing gear. After you report a problem, follow up to make sure the repair has been performed. Pavement spalling, where the surface is actually breaking up, is another area of concern. Spalling can easily result in the loss of directional control or even cause foreign object damage, or FOD, to an aircraft. For example, both jet engines and propellers can be badly damaged by pieces of loose pavement. Therefore, if you see any areas of spalling during your inspection, they should be reported so that the loose pavement can be removed. By the way, FOD isn't limited to loose pieces of pavement. In fact, most FOD to airplanes is caused by sloppy ramp practices by airport tenants. Inspectors should pick up isolated foreign objects on the spot, but substantial amounts of debris should be reported so that it can be cleaned up as soon as possible. Also, any foreign object debris found during inspection should be noted on the log, and where tenant responsibility can be readily determined, that tenant should be notified. Any bumps or low spots in the pavement should be reported, since bumps can affect directional control and obviously water can collect in a low spot, causing ponding. Touchdown zones on runways used by large aircraft are particularly susceptible to developing ruts. Standing water on runways is particularly dangerous since it can cause aircraft hydroplaning. And water also tends to obscure pavement markings, especially at night. Even small ponds of water are potential problems, since during winter they can freeze, resulting in patchy ice conditions that can cause uneven braking action. Ponding can also attract birds, which can pose a serious hazard to aircraft operations. Low spots aren't the only cause of ponding. Vegetation growing next to the pavement surface can block or slow down water drainage, creating edge dams. The ponding on this taxiway was caused by an edge dam. Needless to say, if you see any ponding during your daily inspection, it should be reported. But it's also a good idea to occasionally conduct a special inspection for ponding immediately after it has rained. While the inspector should look for rubber contamination during the daily inspections, rubber buildup is so gradual that there is not much noticeable change from day to day. So, periodic inspections should be conducted to look for rubber buildup. There are 2 simple tests that an inspector can use to check for rubber contamination. First, if the texture of the pavement feels smooth rather than gritty to the touch, or if rubber can be peeled off the pavement surface. The runway touchdown area and the sections of pavement next to them are the most likely areas for rubber contamination. Consequently, pavement markings can be obscured, and the rubber can also make the pavement slippery when wet. In summary, the important things you should be concerned about during your daily pavement inspection include improper lips that are more than 3 inches high, any cracks because they could be the start of serious pavement problems, potholes, remembering that from little potholes bigger ones grow, breaking up of the pavement or spalling, low spots which can allow water to collect, edge dams created by vegetation along the side of the pavement, foreign object debris on runways, taxiways, and on ramps, and finally, rubber contamination, that slow buildup which can eventually make for obliterated markings and slippery runways. Knowing what to look for on or around the pavement can go a long way in making your operation a safe and efficient one. As an inspector, you should be familiar with the dimensions of both runway and taxiway safety areas at your airport. While the dimensions vary depending on the type of aircraft that use the runway, a Safety area is defined as a rectangular area, usually turfed, centered on the runway centerline, and includes the runway itself, as well as the runway shoulder. Taxiway safety areas have a similar definition. Normally, the safety areas should be able to support equipment for snow removal, firefighting, and rescue operations, and also to be able to help the occasional airplane that leaves the pavement and protect it from major damage. Therefore, the safety area must be cleared, drained, and graded, and have in it only that equipment that the FAA has determined as being absolutely necessary. The safety area next to this runway, for example, has several holes and ruts which could seriously damage an aircraft's landing gear if the plane left the pavement. Edge lights, signs, and navigational aids are examples of equipment that are permitted in a safety area, but the bases for them should be at ground level, and they should be mounted on frangible couplings so that they can easily break away if struck by a moving aircraft. And safety areas must be well drained because standing water keeps the ground soft and consequently makes it impossible for emergency vehicles to move easily. The inspector should also note any area where water runoff has caused ruts. Remember, only authorized equipment should be in a safety area. It is not a storage area. Construction and maintenance operations can cause very real safety problems. Contractors have been known to quit work for the day, leaving piles of dirt, open trenches, tire ruts in the safety area, or even manholes uncovered. Maintenance workers have also been known to compound existing hazardous conditions. So a special inspection should be conducted just before a runway or taxiway is reopened, following any construction or maintenance that has been performed in or around that safety area. Any time an aircraft has left the pavement and entered a safety area, a special inspection should be made to ensure no ruts or holes have been made by the aircraft's tires or by personnel or equipment during the recovery operation. After any significant weather event, at airports equipped with the Engineered Material Arresting System, or EMAS, inspections must be performed to the manufacturer's specifications or in accordance with the airport's inspection guidelines. There are 4 primary areas of consideration in inspecting a safety area. First, make sure there are no ruts, holes, or humps. Second, ensure that only objects absolutely required are on the safety areas, and that those objects which must be above grade are mounted so that they can break away if hit. Third, make sure that the bases of objects have not been exposed as a result of erosion. And finally, look out for construction and maintenance activities and be sure that no hazardous conditions have been created because of that work. Remember that discrepancies should be noted on the inspection checklist so that any hazardous conditions can be corrected. Airport marking and signs provide important information to pilots during landing, takeoff, and taxiing. To avoid pilot confusion and disorientation, all airport markings and signs should be standardized. During the daily inspection, the pavement markings should be checked to be sure they are correct and clearly visible to pilots. Physical changes to pavement markings occur slowly, usually from the effects of sun and weather. Consequently, a comprehensive inspection should be performed periodically to check for peeling, blistering, chipping, and especially for rubber buildup in the touchdown zone areas. And since markings are least visible at night or when the pavement is wet, it's a good idea to occasionally perform special inspections after dark or immediately after a rain. In addition, airport signs should be checked to make sure the proper sign is in the right place, that they can be read easily, and if lighted, that all lights are working. Let's review some typical pavement markings and signs. With one exception, runway markings are always white. Since markings will vary depending on the runway category, it is important for inspectors to be familiar with the markings at their airport. For example, a typical visual runway may only have the runway numerals and a centerline, but a non-precision instrument runway will also have a threshold marking. And if a runway is 4,000 feet or longer and is used by jets, it should also have fixed distance markings. And a precision instrument runway will have touchdown zone markings and side stripes, as well as the non-precision runway markings. Taxiways, which are always marked in yellow, have center lines and may also have double edge lines. The taxiway center line is extended onto the runway to provide a lead-in. Enhanced taxiway markings are intended to provide additional visual cues to taxiing pilots to help them identify the location of a runway holding position. All taxiways that intersect runways have yellow hold position lines, 2 solid lines perpendicular to the taxi center line on the holding side, and 2 sets of broken lines on the runway side. If there is a holding or run-up apron at the end of the runway, the hold position lines should run across the apron. When a runway or taxiway is closed to aircraft operations, it should be marked with a yellow cross or X. Runway thresholds are not always at the beginning of the pavement. Sometimes, landing thresholds are moved so that aircraft have more clearance over obstructions in the approach area. The proper marking of the paved area between the beginning of the pavement and the threshold will be dependent on how this area is intended to be used. The threshold is considered to be displaced if this area is still available for landing rollout from the opposite direction and for takeoffs. The paved area prior to the displaced threshold is marked with white arrows and arrowheads. If the area between the beginning of the pavement and the threshold is not to be used for landing or takeoff, the threshold is considered to be relocated and is marked with yellow chevrons, meaning that it is not available for any aircraft operations, including taxiing. But if the area may still be used for taxiing, a yellow center line is used with 4 yellow arrowheads to indicate the relocated threshold, which is marked in white. In addition to pavement markings, signs provide pilots with important information. Since most signs are located in runway or taxiway safety areas, they should be mounted on frangible couplings on bases that are no higher than ground level. Sign tether anchor hardpoints must be provided on one sign mounting leg above the frangible breaking point. One end of the tether must attach to the sign structure, and the other end must attach below the frangible point on the coupling to either one of the leg mounting bolts or an independent bolt in the mounting pad. Signs must have a minimum of 1 tether per module. For sign arrays, a tether must be used at either end. Sign inspections should include checking for readability, making sure that vegetation or other obstacles are not blocking the sign, ensuring that each sign has the correct lettering or numerals, and if appropriate, making sure all lights are working. A sign should be adjacent to every holding position, and preferably on the left-hand side. The holding position sign has a red background with white lettering, which shows the runway designation arranged with numerals relative to the respective threshold. While red and white holding position signs are the current standards, changes in Advisory Circular 150-5345-44 call for a black outline to be added to the white legend on runway signs. Consult the most recent advisory circular for complete information. A red sign with a white ILS shows the critical area for an instrument landing system. Hold position lines should also be on the pavement next to the ILS sign. The standard for informational signs that provide taxiway guidance or destination information is black lettering on a yellow background. Pilots are advised of the distance remaining to the end of the runway